before. Difficult. I'll probably use the easy word. Difficult. But now Logan, looking for that big bag, is going after one of the absolute best defensive fighters in the world. And caller, go ahead. Hey, all right, good. Good. I'm glad I got you on. For those who don't know, this is my buddy John. I was going to have on as a guest today. I guess I'll have to work out those kinks. Kind of got started a little late here, trying to work out the kinks of the site again. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna have to kind of look into that. Yeah, that was weird because I kept kind of hitting you to go live, and it says you were live, but you weren't able to hear me, and I wasn't able to hear you, and I'm like, okay, I can't really find what's going on here. But yeah, John, what's your thoughts before we even get into wrestling? I was gonna start my show today talking about Logan Paul signing up for this fight with Floyd Mayweather in February. What's your thoughts on this thing? Logan Paul, like the YouTuber guy? Yeah, so his brother, of course, I'm not sure if you know. So for those who don't know, his brother Jake recently kind of knocked out a NBA guy, Nate Robinson, on the fight card. Where the main event was Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr., which, by the way, that wasn't even fair because clearly Mike can still fight at least a little bit. Mike is trying to start a Legends League where basically he's going to have older boxers in it and stuff like that. They'll do a lot of fights for charity, things of that nature, but of course they'll be able to take home purse. And I believe this was the first fight, and then like before there was like some concerts and some music guests, which, by the way, it didn't sound very good, so they'll have some kinks to work out before February. But his brother recently, after all this, where Jake kind of knocked out Nate Robinson, said he'd be willing to fight whoever in the world. Now, at first, he was talking about fighting Conor McGregor, which Dana White was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not gonna let Conor get in an octagon or whatever with this kid and kill him," because I think he basically said Conor plays too much, and then like he did throw out like, "I'll let you fight Amanda Nunes though," and like for a second everyone was like, "Dude, I'd love that." Like if one of the Paul brothers got into a ring with Amanda Nunes, like she would school them. But he ended up signing. He ended up actually getting Floyd Mayweather to actually sign a contract to do a fight, partially for charity, but also they're going to get a big portion of the bag. With him in February. I believe the first tier of pay-per-view buys have already been bought. They're on the second tier now, and they're getting close to being bought. I actually need to get on that because the third tier gets up to like $50 or $60 to buy the fight. Now, I'm not paying $60 to watch that kid get knocked out in like 2 minutes. I mean, it would be entertaining, but I don't think I want to pay $60 to watch that kid get knocked out by a guy who's not really known as a knockout artist in like 2 minutes. So yeah, he'll be fighting Floyd Mayweather. I got to go look up the date again. I think it's February 19th. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that, John? I don't watch. Yeah, yep. Yeah, I think Logan's the same brother where they went to the suicide Japanese forest, and like the Japanese culture said. I mean, actually, I think we said it here in America before the Japanese culture said it. They pretty much mocked it, and like for views and all that. Which okay, yeah, good for you, you got them, but then you got yourself to be more hated. Like everyone just thinks you two are a bunch of douchebags. Now, a part of me understands that that's the selling point is that they don't be likable, do stupid stuff, make money for it. But I've always said that's someday that costs you a lot more than the money you were getting for it. Um, and yeah, when I saw that he was signing up for that fight, I just kind of smiled because I'm like I don't think he realized what he's getting into with Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather is one of the best defensive fighters of all time. Like it's not even close. Technically, he's one of the best of all time. Um, I mean, Conor McGregor was the first guy since Manny Pacquiao. And by the way, he was kind of half a punk for doing what he did by waiting to fight Manny Pacquiao till he was a bit older. But it was also smart business because Manny, when he was younger, if he touched Floyd, could have knocked him out. Manny older was a bit slower, but still has a lot of his power, and but doesn't do a lot of dodging because he could, even though Manny's a smaller guy, he could take a lot of hits, a lot of licks. So when they finally fought, and I thought it was a good fight, but I was also like, yeah, but this is an older Manny Pacquiao. Like this fight, from the time the fight actually happened, which I think was 2018. It's like this happened. This fight should have happened like a year after I graduated in 2008. Like that's when this fight should have happened, but it didn't. And so when I saw that Floyd signed on, I'm like, well, first off, he's going to knock him out because Floyd Mayweather, for those who don't know, he's actually in his 50s now. I think he's like in his early 50s, or at least 48, 49. I'll have to double check that, but I'm like, he's going to knock this kid out because first off, the kid's going to get tired from dancing around the ring and not being able to really hit him. To give the kid some credit, I watched his fight with KSI. And yes, he's got some power, but I think he won that fight by technical knockout. So basically or not technical knockout, but he won it by judge's decision. I'm gonna have to go back as I watched that fight live, but I can't remember off the top of my head, and I should have got the notes on that. But yeah, he won that fight, but he didn't knock KSI out, like not even close. Like KSI almost knocked him out a couple of times, but was trying to take the match extremely seriously too. So he wasn't like showboating or nothing like that. So when the ref would tell him to break off, because he got the kid down a couple times, when he told him to break off, he would break off of him instead of another I always said a real boxer would have just, as he was kind of slumping in the corner, would have just caught him with a hook, and that would have been it. Like he would have just went night night. So, like Nate Robinson did, and embarrassed black people for the next like 10 years. So, or at least the next 3 months. So yeah, him taking on this fight, it'll be over in 2 minutes. It's not going to make it to the second round because he's not going to touch Floyd. He's just not going to touch him. Conor McGregor, who? What's that? What if he trains really hard? He gets really good. I'll say this. Yeah, he's 25. I think because I think Logan is 25 or 26, and then Jake's 24, 23, 24. I don't see how that happens. I mean, he's got a few months. Man, dude, I'll say this: a lot of people who put money on Floyd in this fight already. Well, that's for sure. But like when I look at it in a boxing vacuum, like if he pulls it off, I mean, you'll be talking. That's going to be one of the biggest stories, not only of 2021 but of all time. if he can pull off a win against Floyd Mayweather. Even though Floyd Mayweather is older, I mean, you're talking about a world class seasoned boxer who was literally just in the ring like a year ago, and can still move in the ring. So yeah, I mean, if he pulls it off, and like I tell people, anything can happen. But man, if he pulls this off, woo, man, dude, I would be in so much shock. Like I would be in so. I think the world would be in so much shock if he's able to actually beat Floyd Mayweather. So overall, I think him and his brother, what they are are they're just they're. I personally just think they are, and I got to be careful how I say this, but like I'm not sure if anybody remembers Andy Kaufman from way back in the day. I mean, Andy Kaufman was before my time, before yours, and probably before some of the people watching me on YouTube and some of the people listening on Blog Talk Radio. Andy Kaufman was basically a comedian, an actor, um, and yeah, he would get into the ring and he would do these different things, but he kind of took it from a like an extreme comedy side of things. Um, and that's kind of where I see the brothers at this juncture in their young careers. Um, is that they're because these it's not just that they're YouTubers; they're former Viners. Like you know what I mean? Like, and I know they've come a ways from that. Um, but I and they do, like I said, they have taken the boxing game seriously. Like when they've gotten to, when they've done these fights, they have been training with, guys who have trained former pros. So that's why I don't count it out. But they've also fought, for the most part, it's been other YouTubers, other entertainers, things of that nature. In Nate's case, an actual professional athlete, but I don't know. I don't think he trained hard enough. I just don't think he took the fight seriously enough because an athlete of that caliber should have been ready for whatever. And I don't think he took it seriously enough. So that's the way I kind of look at them. And yes, like I said before, they take the fight game very, very seriously. Like they use their money to actually train, to actually study, to actually learn. And yes, if they want to become boxers and start their own league, which is kind of what it sounds like they would like to do, I've got no problem with it. I respect it. Anything you want to do, I'm all for like achieving your dream. But one thing I'm not going to do, like in my case in blogging, one thing I'm not going to do is blog radio. Is go and take on Joe Rogan and keep shouting things at the distance, hope it goes viral, and hope he responds to me. I want if Joe Rogan ever listens to one of my shows, I want it to be because people think I'm fun to talk to, listen to, things of that nature. It grows enough, and that he comes at me from a place of respect. You know what I mean? Where it's just like young dude, kind of doing what I'm doing now, kind of wants to get to what I'm, where I'm at now. Got a lot of love and respect for that. Would love to be on your show. These dudes are okay with it being from a place of like, I just want to hurt this kid. Like, and I mean, in short term, it works. They're making a lot of bag. I can't hate on them for that. But yeah, like I said before, as far as him beating Floyd, that would be the biggest shock of the year. That would be the biggest shock of the year. Because also his footwork yeah. Well, because like I said, I've watched the other two fights, or I've watched the highlights of the other two fights. I actually watched the one fight. Their footwork, because they're amateurs, is still really, really bad. His hand-eye coordination is getting better, but it's like it. If Floyd was able to avoid a lot of the power from Conor McGregor, a dude who's basically still in his prime in the UFC, like Like I don't. That's where I'm like I don't see how the kid has a chance. I now if Floyd plays with him too much and the kid catches him because he does have some power in his legs and his arms, so his punch is pretty powerful. If he plays with him too much and Floyd gets caught, then that's on Floyd. You know what I mean? Um, but I don't think he's going to do that because I'm pretty sure he watched that fight with Nate and he understands, like, okay, these two kids have some power to their game. And he knows, I think he knows one of their trainers pretty well because he fought against a fighter of one of the trainers. Uh, man, what, 2005, I think that was. So, like, he knows the trainer's style. So, and Floyd's not even a student of the game. He's a teacher of the game at this point in his career. Um, so yeah, like I said, if he pulls it off, you know, more praise to him. It'll definitely be the shock of the year. I feel like that's the biggest reason for the fight. The biggest reason for the fight is for him to for them to gain more experience in boxing. Yep, to get more followers and make more money. I just like I said, I think it's a dangerous thing to take on a 50-year-old Floyd Mayweather. Like if it's like a almost 60-year-old Oscar De La Hoya who's now just kind of training now since he wants to get back into the ring, then okay, like because when Oscar left the game, like he looked like a boxer who probably needed to retire when he left the game, the fight game. But it's like Floyd can still fight. Like Floyd trains hard every day, like he's gonna have another fight every month. So like, yeah, like I say, if he pulls it off, excellent. But I don't expect he will. I expect it to look okay for like 2-3 minutes. Maybe it goes into the second round because, like I said, I don't think Floyd's going to get too close to him to allow him to hit one of his power punches. Because jab wise, he's not going to really get anything off of Floyd Mayweather. It's just not going to happen. If Conor McGregor can barely do it, there's no way this king can do it. So yeah, I like I said, I think I'm gonna buy the second tier fight and actually stream it on YouTube. My reaction to it, I got a feeling this should be pretty fun. Because I'm also wondering what else is going to be on that card. Usually, what they like to do is they do like the Pauls will have their main event fight, but then there'll be some undercard fights that are actually pretty decent. Of like some young unknown boxers maybe you've never heard of, things of that nature. So, and what they're doing there is I actually feel is pretty positive. But yep, off of that fight game, talking about WWE before TLC. I'm not sure, John. Did you get the chance to see Raw this week?
No, I don't. I guess I probably should have told you before I came on here. I'm actually pretty new.
Oh, okay.
Like I only started watching it like a year ago. I mostly watch AEW.
Oh, okay. Oh, trust me, we will get into AEW very, very shortly. I will be getting to Dynamite and Dark very, very shortly here. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of lead us into TLC here. Um, so on Raw, some of the biggest beats were the build for the Drew AJ match. So to start the show, it was Miss TV, which is they're supposed to be annoying. They really are, but it's unfortunately it's annoying in a way where it's like go away annoying right now for me when it comes to the Miz and John Morrison. And I never thought I would say that about John Morrison because I was happy when he came back to WWE because I thought he deserved a better singles run than he ever got. And I understood why at first he was with the Miz. I think it's gone on a bit too long now. Plus, Miz is 40 and John is like 35. So like they should allow John to have his own singles run, but I digress. They started in the ring with a Miz TV segment. Had AJ Styles on. AJ cutting the promo about you know about not only Drew McIntyre, champion Drew McIntyre, but he was cutting a promo because he was going to have a match with Sheamus. And they also had John Morrison. So John Morrison, this had to be now literally 12 years ago, maybe 13 or 14 years ago. They did a callback where John Morrison once dressed as a young Drew McIntyre to mock him. And they kind of did a callback to that because he was like in like the Scottish kilts and all that, the warrior kilt, and he's kind of like mocking the Scottish action and all that. And I hate to say it, guys, I don't find Miz and Morrison very funny anymore. It's just annoying. Like not like I care about like what where they hurl the insults. It's just I just find it annoying. Like they just to me they almost break up a show when they're on it for too long. So yeah, he's cutting a promo at first on Drew, which is pretty good. He's talking about how listen, Drew's been dominant, and Randy Orton kind of taught him a lesson about how hard it is to stay on top as champion when someone is also on top of their game. But at the pay-per-view, all that heart is not going to matter, and I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to climb that ladder, and I'm going to take his championship. And then he starts talking about Sheamus. The Sheamus kind of intertwined into a lot of Drew's storylines recently. I've kind of liked. They are real life best friends for people who don't know. Kind of came up into the business together, and then when Drew originally got fired in 2010, they actually still stayed very, very close friends. Sheamus knows his wife, knows a lot of his family members, and vice versa. And so as he's cutting the promo on Sheamus then comes out, kind of breaks up the segment where I went, thank God. And they have a match. Match is really good. Sheamus, once again, another guy who's actually in his early 40s now, looks great. I know at first he took some time off because he's having some neck issues, and there was a point I think in 2018, 2019 where he didn't think he was going to be able to come back at all. But he started this training regimen, which, by the way, people, I believe what I'll do in my chat line is I'll go find that link and I'll drop it in the link there of Sheamus's training show on YouTube. It's actually really, really good. But he's in phenomenal shape. He's faster than he's ever been. He seems more mentally clear than he's ever been. The match was awesome. Now, AJ did technically win clean. I really wasn't the biggest fan of that, but it is what it is. AJ probably should go over, seeing as how he's fighting Drew for the championship on Sunday, which I will be able to kind of partially see and then have to rewatch after I'm done with work on Sunday. So after the match, though, after Styles wins, there was a stupid little commercial interruption, but it probably would have been better without the commercial interruption. Was the fact that almost that big tall black dude that's with AJ Styles now, because Sheamus kind of went after AJ, who pinned him, and he was going to try to beat him down, but almost kind of stops him and pulls Sheamus out the ring. Now Sheamus kind of trips on the second rope a little bit. It happens, but I found the match or the after match beat down by AJ to be absolutely great, or as his nickname says, phenomenal. AJ is great. I think he's been a huge blessing to Vince during these later parts of the 2010s because they have failed to really build a lot of young stars outside of the Shield members. So, huh? No. He's 42. But he's been a blessing in the sense that or yeah, he's 41, 42. But he's been a blessing because like they needed new stars. They were basically just using Shield members and not building anyone around the Shield members. I know they were trying at one point to try to build up Ryback, but his ego kind of got in the way. John for a while, John Cena there. Yeah, no, he there was only a 3-year period because he was still an Impact, well, TNA at the time, but he was still an Impact until I believe 2015. And then he went to New Japan and had a foot. Once again, his nickname really does say a lot about him. A phenomenal run while he was in New Japan and on the indie scene. And then, he got the call to maybe sign with WWE. The money was once again phenomenal, and he signed up. But he's been a blessing in that sense because he's not a typical WWE guy. So in that sense, he also helped bring in people because people were going to follow AJ no matter what he did anyway when he was done with New Japan and in his indie run and those great matches in the British scene that he had with the likes of like young Will Ospreay, and I can go on, young Walter, like I can go on and on and on. So to me, he's been a blessing for them because he came in and he's basically been able to just be a top guy since he's been there, which is and still is refreshing. It was even more refreshing when they signed on Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson to come and join as well. I like I said before, I was and am a big fan of those guys. They probably shouldn't have dropped him during the Black Wednesday, but it happens. Next was the New Day and Jeff Hardy versus the Hurt Business. Riddle actually came out to accompany them to kind of even the odds on the outside. I am a big fan of Matt Riddle, but I'm starting to think Vince sees him as a comedy character. Because they also have him doing a lot of these like salesman pitches and stuff, and yeah, they're kind of funny, but like it's like, yeah, Matt has a comedy thing to him, but he's also one of the best in-ring performers you guys have that's under 40. Hell, that's under 38 right now. So we'll see. The fact that he's in a feud with Bobby Lashley in the Hurt Business lets me know that maybe they do maybe want to do something with him. The six-man tag was actually pretty good. The little like mini story of Cedric being over hungry is a really awesome mini story that they got going on in the Hurt Business. I don't think they'll kick him out of the Hurt Business because once again, his over eagerness has cost them matches, but it's also won them matches. So once again, it was a great TV match. I wouldn't expect anything less, especially when you have the New Day there of Kofi and Xavier Woods, two top-notch wrestlers, and even Jeff Hardy, who's older and slower now, can still have a good WWE match. What are your thoughts on Jeff Hardy nowadays, John?
The times that I have watched, well, I think when I was trying to watch SmackDown and Raw, he was still on SmackDown.
Okay.
And usually I would just like fast forward to whatever bit Jeff Hardy was in. Watching. It was Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles.
Oh, okay. So probably like late 2018, early 2019.
No, it was this year, I think.
Oh, okay.
It was from this year.
Oh yeah, that was earlier this year. No, you're right. The Intercontinental Championship feud. Yeah, I remember that. You're right.
Yeah, and then there was the other dude, Sami Zayn.
Yeah, who just came back. Yeah, and then that's when they all got switched over to Raw. Yeah. It's interesting when I look at Jeff Hardy, between him and his brother Matt on AEW. Huh?
I love Jeff Hardy's face, man.
So he used to do for a while when he originally left WWE in 2009. he started doing some really, even though he was still unfortunately having some drug issues, he was starting to do some really cool stuff with TNA. The Willow character I know was beloved by TNA fans. Well, half of TNA fans loved it. Half of them were like, "This is stupid." Um, and then there was kind of the broken Hardys, and that's kind of where the face paint started more and more. I was actually happy that when he actually came back to WWE that he brought that part with him, because that I always thought that was really cool that the face paint became a part of his wrestling character, that like the Hardys kind of still all live in this like extended broken world that Matt created. I thought that was always pretty cool. Um, I've liked his I liked his run. I've liked his return. I've liked some of the runs he's had in his return. Um, I actually really did like the triple threat feud between all of them. Um, I really like the triple threat feud between all of them because they're three great workers. And Sami Zayn, for those who don't know, used to be El Generico on the indie scene. Yeah, Sami Zayn is one of the best wrestlers when he's given things to do. For a while, he was just the guy that Braun Strowman would beat up after having the feud from NXT with Kevin Owens outside wrestling best friend Kevin Owens. Um, he was just the guy that used to get beat up by Braun Strowman, had the feud with Braun Strowman. Um, but Sammy has always been capable of carrying like a title like the Intercontinental Championship, carrying it for a long time and having really fun stories and great matches. He's incredibly talented. I was actually a big proponent of that triple threat feud with those three when Sammy came back, because Sammy basically sat home during the first few months of the pandemic. I don't blame him. And Vince always said he wouldn't punish any wrestlers who decided to do that, and he's kept his word on that. Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns. There was another one, another bigger name, I should say, that for a while sat at home during the first couple months of the shutdown. And I like that Vince didn't punish them for that. Like, a lot of these guys have families, guys and gals have families, and I sometimes with Vince, like I've always said, Vince is a very, very gray area guy for me, because he does a lot of great things. He's one of the big reasons here in America we all love wrestling so much, but he's also one of the reasons why at times, guys like John, instead of watching the WWE product, I like, man, I much prefer AEW. like a lot of Vince's decisions, and some of his business decisions at times, like all the wrestlers they let go on Black, huh? Well, at times he does. Well, and it seems like that, but in a sense, he doesn't. No, he doesn't always book them, which is especially now in the days of the pandemic, where there are no live shows outside of what they do live for the Thunderdome and things of that nature. Yeah, he doesn't really book guys and gals a lot. Also, like I tell people, do go and get the network, not just for shows like NXT UK, and Main Event, and the fact that you get the pay-per-views. Because on Main Event, he actually allows the guys and gals he doesn't use to go be creative on there. So those shows are actually been more enjoyable. Also 205 live. But the library is incredible. The library for the network is incredible. But yeah, he doesn't allow a lot of creative freedom for a lot of people who aren't bigger names. And yeah, the thing with the Twitch and all that, like I told people, it's yes, he's overstepping his bounds. Him and his legal team are overstepping their bounds, because as long as they weren't using the creative license names that he had given them, and they were all mostly used. And AJ actually owns his own name, so I was shocked AJ even I'm guessing it's something in the contract because I'm shocked AJ even listen to that because AJ owns the name. He's been AJ Styles his whole wrestling career. But yeah, and like I said, I when I read about it, I'm like this. It's a really dumb move because in a month or two, it won't even matter. Like it won't. It won't. Like they'll allow them to go back to it with no problem. Like it's stupid. It's stupid. Uh, and I get where people like they hear those stories and think like Vince just doesn't care about his wrestlers. It's like I said, Vince is very complicated. Vince is a very he's always been complicated. What's that?
About the money for him.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's the money. I mean, he pays them well. And for those who don't know, like even though like sometimes the wrestlers aren't on the shows, they still are contractually paid. Um, that's actually been guaranteed through the rest of this year and probably starting into next year. And I'm sure wrestlers in the future will work their contracts out that way. But he's paying them even if he's not using them. So it's not that he doesn't care about them and won't take care of them. It's just he's a complicated man. He really is complicated overall. But I'm gonna go ahead and kind of get through the rest of Raw. So I think the whole Lana thing is over for now. Lana beat Nia Jax next. Wasn't a good match. I don't blame them for only giving them like 3 minutes because I think Nia Jax is probably one of the worst wrestlers that they have. But then after the match, I mean, they just did a beatdown angle and took her out of the women's tag team match at TLC, and I'm like, wait, was it the whole point of this story for her to maybe actually have a tag team partner that could help her take these belts off of them? Even though a lot of people felt that they weren't going to probably take the belts off of Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, who I think is absolutely wasted in this whole thing. But by the way, Shayna Baszler is in her 40s, so they should probably get on a singles run for her. Up next, Elias did a. I love Elias, but he does a show or a thing and introduces that Jackson Riker will be his new bodyguard. For those who don't know, Jackson Riker used to be with Wesley and Blake, who are now on SmackDown with Baron Corbin. And I don't have a problem with them bringing Jackson Riker back, even after the stupid stuff he said. It's not even really worth getting into. Feel free to go look it up. Jackson Riker suspended from WWE television. You can read the article about what he tweeted and all that got him into some trouble. But I don't know. The biggest issue I have with WWE right now on Raw, one of the biggest issues I have is the 24/7 title picture. It's the 24/7 title to me is basically the hardcore title without people getting hit with weapons all the time. Like it's stupid to me. It's stupid, and then good wrestlers are actually wasting away in that whole division. Which is why a lot of the main wrestlers that used to be in that division were like fired earlier this year. So, but I'm sure they are not sad about that. For those who don't know, EC3 was doing a really excellent job in ROH's tournament. Excuse me, earlier this year. So, and had a nice little run in Impact, even though he's no longer signed with the company. He was on a week-to-week contract basis with them. But it's really stupid. So they're doing the concert. R-Truth is still incredibly funny. Don't get me wrong. I love R-Truth. The man has found the fountain of youth, I think, because he doesn't look like he's aged from the past, the age of like 34 for like 10 years now. But he interrupts, does a funny bit. It was really funny. And then as Elias tries to start to play again, a ton of the 24/7 wrestlers start to come out for the championship and to get R-Truth and pin R-Truth. And then Jackson Riker, as they get in the ring, he just beats them all down, which is fine. I get you. You're going to kind of overall push Jackson as this monster character, but as this monster bodyguard for Elias. And I think long term it'll work to have him in a tag, or for the next, at least for the next year, it should work for him to be in a tag team with Elias, a guy who they just have never trusted to have a championship or anything, even though he's super over. And yeah, that was kind of the end of that segment. It'll be really cool to see what happens with Elias and Jackson Riker. But what's your thoughts on Elias?
I know he's the guitar guy, right?
Yeah.
The big bushy beard.
Yeah.
I like him in the memes. The meme where it's like, where the kid's like, oh, I want Elias, and then the mom's like, oh, we got Elias at home, and then it shows the picture of Marco Stunt playing guitar.
He's
Either that or it's the other way around. Either way, it's funny.
Yeah, it is pretty fun. Yeah, and I've seen the dark things where, and actually, I didn't realize that Marco Stunt could sing like that. Yeah, it's definitely very interesting. What was that?
He's staying on stage with Fozzy. I've seen a video of it on YouTube.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
With Chris Jericho fan.
I didn't know that. I haven't listened to Fozzy in a long time because they kind of just became butt rock. To me, anyway. So I just.
I still sing along with music every week.
It's a catchy little song. It's a catchy little song. The lyrics are definitely very childish, but it's very catchy. It's a very catchy little tune. Right. So yeah, I find Elias entertaining, but it seems like he's a guy that they have no plans for. He's going to toil around a lot. I think his best bet is, because he signed a new contract that doesn't expire until 2023. His best bet is to keep being entertaining and improve on his wrestling enough that if he decides to go somewhere else, which I think Impact Wrestling could probably use someone like him that's just that entertaining every week. Yeah, there's nothing for him in WWE because they're clearly not going to push him to do anything. And then hour 3 of Raw was basically dominated by the whole Firefly Funhouse, Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt feud build to what is now a Firefly Inferno house match at TLC. So I liked how it started. So Bray comes out as TV show Bray. The puppets are kind of like in the corner with like puppeteers holding them up. What's that?
Those are my favorite WWE.
Yeah, I agree. Like I've been telling people, I will always disagree with Brian Alvarez. I guess it's just not for him. I love Bray Wyatt. The only thing I did not like that they did with Bray Wyatt is that he got beat by Goldberg in Saudi Arabia. That was stupid. All to do a title match between him and Roman. You could have just had that as a singles match. No, most people don't care. Yes, Goldberg gives you a short pop because he's a nostalgia act at this point. But like, most wrestling fans don't care. Like, they just don't care about Goldberg anymore. So anyway, no, he's so in WCW. What Eric Bischoff did, which was very brilliant, was he hid, and it's something that Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff were actually very well known for, and why even when kind of Vince took a semi-step back and allowed Paul Heyman and Eric to take over creative control of Raw and SmackDown back in the early to mid 2000s, it was such a phenomenal run, and we all loved. Anyone who watched it back then loved it. Was because they would hide the wrestlers' weaknesses and accentuate their strengths, and that included in their TV matches, and how they would have the bookers do the TV matches. Vince does not do that. And so like when Goldberg actually came in 2004, 2005, at first, like, that's when the allure of Goldberg kind of started to go away, because then he had the feud with Triple H, and to me, it basically exposed how limited of a wrestler he is, and kind of how limited of a performer he is. Like basically what he does well. Goldberg would have worked more in the '80s as a character than he does now, and and that even goes back to his earlier run in WWE. Like he would have worked better like way back in late '80s, early '90s wrestling than he does now, because once the shtick is kind of like exposed and everyone can see what it is, if it's still then not entertaining as it should be, no one cares anymore. So, like I said, at this point, he's mostly a nostalgia act for people who probably haven't watched wrestling in almost 15 years, and Vince can bring him back and get that pop of a rating that he likes to get, which is like an extra like 10,000. That match was so horrible.
I didn't mean to poke the bear, Jesse. I'm sorry.
Oh wait, did you say the same thing with the Undertaker?
Yeah, they keep bringing him back. I know they had just had that big retirement for him,
Well, they had the retirement for him recently. No, you know what? To be honest, I agree. Undertaker. Two things with the Undertaker. One, he should have never lost his streak to Brock. That was a horrible decision. I get that they did that to build Brock as more of a monster, but Brock was already a monster when he came back. Like the dude had been a heavyweight champion in UFC. Everyone already thought he was a monster. There was no need to try to make him a bigger one. Like it was clear he was already a monster. So that was number one. And then number two, Undertaker had a run after that of guys he wanted to give up the streak to, and I mean maybe long term it didn't hurt Bray Wyatt because I really love the Fiend and the Firefly Funhouse stuff, but it would have really helped a young Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt family if he would have been the guy to break the streak. Because I know originally he wanted Edge to do it when he was like 17-0 or something like that, but Edge didn't. Understandably, I get why Edge at that time was like, I can't be the guy to do it. Like I can't be the guy to do it. Triple H definitely didn't want to do it. Even though he did want to maybe give it to Triple H to kind of build on his legacy, but Triple H back then was already starting the stuff with NXT, and he understood the importance of trying to build young wrestlers. And was like, no, I can't do it. And then Shawn simply wasn't going to do it because Shawn wanted to retire at that point in time. So even though those two matches are just legendary, another reason to get the network to just go watch those two WrestleMania matches. They all inspired me as a young 19, 20-year-old, and now in my early 30s, they're still two of the greatest matches at WrestleMania I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, he should have technically retired in 2017. I would have had no problem, and this is why the heel run at huh?
He should have. I don't. Maybe I'm not. Maybe it's because I'm just such a new wrestling fan. But in my mind, it would have been the best way to do it when he lost the streak the first time. If that had been because at that point he was already only wrestling once a year, right?
He was wrestling. Yeah, because at that juncture, he was wrestling maybe 3 times a year. So he would wrestle WrestleMania. Yeah, because basically after the Shawn matches, he would maybe do like SummerSlam or Survivor Series, but that was it. Yeah. You're right. No, you're right. And like I said, I actually thought Roman. So there was a story that maybe if they wouldn't have had Brock do it, then 2016 would have been the time because they would have had Roman do it. And I actually thought that was perfect in the sense of like you can build Roman as a heel because he even back then he really wasn't working as a babyface, and they decided not to do that. And I always, like I said, I will always hate the fact that they gave it to Brock. Yeah, I know at that point he was only wrestling about 2 to 3 times a year, but that mystique then for every WrestleMania for like some young guy to call him out would have been awesome. Because then it just builds on the lore of the streak. Like, dude, we only see Undertaker around WrestleMania season um, nowadays. So, like, the fact that now these young guys are calling him out, I think it would have done a world of service to a young guy to be the guy to take the streak, and then that way, when he would have retired, it would have looked better. Because yeah, like Vince paraded him out there too much. Like let Mark, like I said, Mark Calloway should have retired back in 2017. Like he should have retired in 2017. He should have never been on any of those Saudi Arabia shows. Like they should have never even taken that Saudi Arabian money. But it's Vince McMahon. That's a part of his complicated character. And so yeah, I agree. Like I will always agree with people who are like, dude, he probably should have retired way before then. I'm like, and I can't argue against that. Yeah, he's just too old. Yeah, the hip surgery's finally caught up. Like, yeah, he couldn't move anymore. But yeah, back to Raw, and this will be it for Raw. Most of Raw's third hour was dominated by the Firefly Funhouse stuff. Since Bray has returned, like I said, outside of the Goldberg stuff, he's been the best thing in WWE. Um, I know some people don't like, well, every time he beats a guy, like they do something stupid and they become a stupid character. Actually, for me, every time the Fiend has kind of beat a guy, the refreshment of the character is something that was desperately needed. I always say like I'll prove my points. Um, Daniel Bryan was a heel character that no one was booing. He gets into a feud with the Fiend, and he can go back to being the beloved babyface, also kind of bring back a little bit of the American Dragon. It works. Plus the history that was already there between him and Bray. Seth Rollins, the history between the Wyatt family and the Shield. I think it works. It worked absolutely beautifully. People are already starting to turn on the fact that like every time Seth had the championship now, Brock was going to come back, beat him for it, and then he had to work his way back to beating Brock again. That gets old, and that was happening too much in just 1 year. So yes, it worked when it was the Fiend, even though I thought the Hell in the Cell pay-per-view they had, that's when he should have actually taken the championship off of Seth if you were going to do that, even though I didn't believe Bray needed a championship that early, if at all, at that point. Because the mystique of the character was already so good. Finn Balor needed to have that happen because he was already thinking about going back to NXT at that point. He wasn't really being used in a very serious way. I mean, he was an upper mid carder, but since his original call up and then beat Seth to become the first ever Universal Champion, but because he got hurt, I'm guessing Vince just didn't see him as a reliable guy anymore. So he needed something because babyface Finn was kind of getting a little dull. And then the Fiend, debuts in an awesome way at that SummerSlam two years ago. And, it's done a world of wonders for Finn to kind of go back to the Prince and go back down to NXT. I've always said, it actually has worked. I know the one guy so far they seem to be keeping him away from is Roman, but they can't avoid that's got to happen at some point. like we're gonna get there eventually. I can't wait when we get there, but it's gonna happen. It's where he's going to destroy Roman Reigns. Like it's gonna happen, people. But yeah, and as far as this feud goes, I've always thought Randy and Bray have always worked well together. Now, what has been out of their hands is some of the matches they've been in. The haunted house match or whatever the heck it was, 2 or 3 years ago, was stupid. But the feud itself, I thought was fine. I had no problem with the burning of the shack. It actually drove into the lore of Bray Wyatt. It worked. I thought it worked. The only thing that was really funny and stupid was the Randy Orton pose in front of the fire. that was pretty cheesy and lame, but yeah. That was a huge meme back in like 2017, 2018. Yeah, because Brandy did that after he burnt like Sister Abigail's like funeral house or something like that. When Bray was finally WWE champion and people were like super, super behind Bray. But they've always worked really, really, really well together. This week was kind of up and down with that third hour. So I like that he came out with the puppets and he was the Funhouse Bray. I like the stupid little jokes. I know some people didn't. I thought it was fun. I'm like, dude, he's supposed to be like a child's host of a TV show. Yeah, exactly. In a different reality, like it's going to be childish dad jokes, like it's supposed to be, because it's also supposed to make you feel uneasy. And I think Bray does a really great job with the. Really, like, and it works. It really works. And then I know recently them bringing Alexa Bliss into his Firefly Funhouse has done wonders for her because she was incredibly stale as a character. So, but like I said, I was up and down this week on the whole thing because I like the original promo. I like that then Randy Orton was like, why don't we play a game of hide and seek? Because, of course, this version of Bray when he's not the Fiend is, kind of a child. And he was like, I love hide and seek, and I'm going to come find you. I did like the little like comedy bits in between where like R-Truth was talking to Husky the pig, and then Matt Riddle ended up talking to Ramblin' Rabbit in a different like little size segment. I actually thought that was pretty cute and funny because really usually in the past the wrestlers have never really interacted with the puppets. You've just sometimes in the past you've just seen them in the background creeping around and stuff. But then we get to the actual angle. Now, I like the setup. It's Bray's old rocking chair when he was the Eater of Worlds, Bray. And, Child Bray is always redrawn to that. It's even though he said when he came back that it was beaten out of him, he's clearly always drawn to his old self. So, of course, he sits in the rocking chair, and then Randy Orton does the beatdown angle. Now, here is where I thought it got a little stupid. So this is part of this was clearly pre-taped how they did this again, and that's okay. I have no problem with it when you're trying to do a supernatural element to a character. Nowadays, it's actually probably better off. I think Impact and AEW can learn from this, and we're going to talk about AEW Dynamite right after this and Dark. Yeah, well, and Impact with the Matt Hardy and Jeff and the Broken Universe learn to do this really, really well. Is if you're going to do the pre-tape stuff for these supernatural characters, just be smart about how you do it. They did not pre-tape this very well at all. So he beats down Childlike live. This part I believe was live. He beats down Childlike Bray Wyatt and then throws him into a coffin-like box. But you can tell where the cut for the pre-tape stuff happened because all of a sudden Randy is at a different angle, like turned all the way around from where he actually turned all the way around after he like locked the box. And then he kind of turns around with like the gasoline and stuff. I'm like, okay, well this is clearly where it's pre-taped. They did not insert this very, very well into the live footage. And then he sets it on fire. Well, it's interesting because they're literally in a baseball stadium right now. So like this this should work better for them. It's yeah. So he so yeah, he then turns around, he sets it on fire, and the Fiend pops out. Randy's selling of this I actually thought was awesome. Because he basically for the first time in this feud, he actually has a pure look of fear, like, what the hell is this? Like, I literally just tried to murder this guy. And now the Fiend character just pops out of the fire like nothing. And also, this is how I could tell. Right, what's up?
This was on last Monday's Raw?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They do highlights of their shows right after the show on YouTube, too. So anyone can go check this out. And they actually put the whole thing up, and I'm glad they did. Oh, yeah. It's interesting. It's fun, but it's also kind of stupid. And this is where you could tell, because when Bray came out at the top of the third hour, like, you could tell he was a little sweaty, and I'm like, well, this is weird. Why is he so sweaty? But then it dawned on me as I'm watching this. I'm like, oh, they literally taped this at some point during the show. Like, he was in full Fiend gear, and they taped this at some point during the show instead of taping it before the show. But I'll forgive them. I thought it was cool to end on that visual that Randy Orton just still cannot overcome this guy. And going into the match at TLC, I actually think Randy's going to get squashed. And I know that sounds crazy. Like, dude, Randy Orton doesn't take squash matches. Like, that's not how it works. But it's like, I think for the character and going into whatever feud he's going to go into with Edge when Edge is cleared, which, by the way, will be around the Royal Rumble again. I think it'll actually make evil Randy a bit better against Edge, because he's going to now know, like, the Fiend just completely overran me. So he's going to try to do even worse things to Edge than what he did before. And then the show ends with a cool little promo with AJ and Drew. The Miz and Morrison get involved. It's kind of a beatdown angle. And AJ climbs the ladder and grabs the championship, which in pro wrestling, the rule is if you grab the championship before the match, guess what? John, you know the rule? Means you don't usually win the championship at the pay-per-view. Which is fine. I do think Drew will probably lose it I think Drew's going to lose it at the Royal Rumble. Probably to Randy Orton. And it'll be stupid. But I think that's what will probably happen. But we'll see. Drew's actually been on every pay-per-view this year. And to be fair, he should be, because he was who's that? Yeah, they went at it for like 3 pay-per-views there, which was dumb, because at SummerSlam, Randy Orton should have just taken he should have just taken the championship off of him at SummerSlam, and then they waited an extra pay-per-view to do it. It didn't make any sense. And then Drew ended up taking it off of him on Raw. So, like, that booking has been a bit up and down, too. I'm going to get into AEW Dynamite and Dark here, because apparently I only booked my show for an hour and a half, and I kind of got started 5 minutes late. That's my fault, guys. So Dynamite, I actually thought was quite interesting, but I actually was I was more of a downer on the show than everyone else was. What was your thoughts on Dynamite this week? Did you get the chance to see it?
Yeah, I watched it on Monday. I love Dynamite.
So go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, the one thing that kind of confused me is I thought that the main event was going to be the 14-man tag match.
So yeah, so something happened with Adam and his family. So he had to stay home this week. So yeah, it was originally supposed to be all the Inner Circle against the three tag teams, and then yeah, but something happened with a family member. They didn't die or something, but like a family emergency happened. It was kind of reported on like the Tuesday before, and so Adam wasn't yeah. So Warlow couldn't make the show, so they turned it into a 12-man instead, which was fine. To be honest, that was one of my problems. The start of the match I thought was fine. It got very cluttered in the middle though, and like I don't do clutter in my wrestling matches very well. Like the Royal Rumble only semi works because it is sort of between the slow moving wrestling and all that. There's always spots. That's WWE spot arena right there is the Royal Rumble usually, and I have no problem with that because they're usually not a big proponent of doing spots all the time. So, or like these huge spots all the time. So it kind of got cluttered in the middle. No, go ahead. Say what you're saying.
My biggest takeaway from that 12-man is I'm really excited next week for Top Flight versus Chris Jericho. Yeah, that's gonna be fucking awesome.
Top Flight, of course, is a couple of kids from actually who trained right here in Minnesota at Ken Anderson's school in the cities. I want to say Airwolf or something else, but I think I'd be wrong about those nicknames. My buddy Zach, for those of you who love wrestling podcasts, 13 Card Subject to Change. They usually release it on Tuesday or Wednesday every week. Has actually seen these guys in their developmental stages. So he's and Eric, who does Discover Pro Wrestling, has seen these guys since they started. So seeing them on AEW television has been very, very cool for them. Because they're super young. Like the one is 19, the other's like 21 or 22. Like, and they're very, very, very good already. They've only been in the business for 2 years. They will get better because they are so young. They will definitely get better. The one thing, like I've told Eric, yeah, and like I told Eric, I'm like I think sometimes because they're the fast baby faces, so they've been taught by Ken, who knows the business, and so they probably think like when they're supposed to wrestle that fast pace, to always wrestle it, really, really fast. But you got to think like you're in there with Chris Jericho, who's damn near 50. You're in there with Jake Hager, who's almost 40. Like you're gonna have to slow it down a little bit. Like, like they can't move at the pace that you can at your early 20s can do. So, but I love the potential of this team because I thought the match with them and Young Bucks were great. Yeah, it was really, really good. And TH2 has been around for a long, long time. So I do like that they're going to kind of do something with Jericho, MJF, and these two kids. I can't wait to see it next week. I think it'll be pretty good. But like I said, it because most of the talent on the other side was so young, the match did get cluttered a bit. Guys kind of just messing up regular areas of spots, and that comes with practice. Now they also the thing is they also tape Dark like right after Dynamite. But the biggest problem is these guys only get to kind of pre-book their matches right before the show because otherwise they don't really do any work besides Wednesday. And I've been a big proponent of somebody telling Tony Khan, like, listen, I would put in their contracts, and the reason they did that was because a lot of these guys can still work the indie scene. But I would put into their contracts, like, listen, unless it's a really big show because I'm paying you more than these independent companies are paying you. Unless it's a really big show where you're making more than what I'm paying you, I need you to be here on Saturdays and Sundays, non-pay-per-views, so we can do like, this is why people think AEW should add like a little third show. Um, so we can, where they can just work and get better, and practice booking, matches with each other. So one of the big news coming out of AEW this week was that, or starting the week, was that Jim Ross kind of got on them about, all these monster like air spots and all that, and how like cluttered it looks. And it does, how cluttered it looks when they all like get into like a group of 10 and wait for the one guy to come jump over the top rope so they can all fall. And it's like, well, to be honest, JR's right. Like, and I like AEW, but sometimes when I watch it, I'm like, see, this is why some people call them spot monkey all the time. Like you guys have to be mindful of the fact. And yes, for the first time 2 weeks ago, they did even pass Raw in ratings. And I know people were like head over heels about that, but I'm like, Raw's been on the decline for like 8 years as far as rating viewership. Like, you should not be very proud of that. You should be more focused that you can steadily stay above 1 million viewers every week. That should be your focus. Because that was my big problem when they even started AEW and they started promoting the first pay-per-view, was that, they were taking all these shots at WWE, but I'm like, guys, WWE's been around for almost 60 years now. Like, and with everything Vince and the company has in place, they're even in a time where they're paying more than what they're making. The money that they have in reserve will allow them to be around at least the next 15 years before even thinking about bankruptcy. Like, they're going nowhere. Like, they're going nowhere. So stop taking your shot at them. It's like, I'm like, I always say, I'm like, you never see AJPW taking a shot at New Japan Pro Wrestling, because you can't compete with someone who's been around longer and has that much of a steady build already, and like New Japan has the media behind them as well. So there's literally, like, you're literally an upstart company. Remember that you're an upstart company. But yeah, apparently a lot of the locker room was angry about him calling that out. But then a couple of really interesting wrestlers actually came to his defense. Darby Allin, who was like, no, I actually agree. He was like, what I have found recently is that I need to work my matches safer, which he has. I'm a smaller guy. If I plan on doing this for a very long time, there's nothing wrong with the air spots I do or anything like that, but I need to limit them and make them special. When you're doing them basically every like minute and a half of your match, it does become less special, and it's real. And then I think it was Eddie Kingston and someone else came to JR's defense on that, and within the company, we're like, listen, man, we've been trying to get some of these younger guys to understand, like, while we do a lot of entertaining stuff and we have been getting a lot more of the younger viewers than WWE, it does not mean that it is sustainable for a long time. Because the truth is, 18 to 35 or 18 to 49, I think it is, or whatever, 18 to 40, that the demo guide is always talking about, is that young audience that you hope will be with you for the next 15 years. Well, also, you got to remember, you're not even the most important thing on your own network. Like, next week, they will be on after the NBA game, because the NBA game always draw about 4 to 5 million viewers, including in your age range. So like, it's like I said, with AEW, they need to be smarter about stuff. Because right now, yes, you are locked into that contract. TNT is not going to get rid of you because you're probably the second best thing on the network. No one else watches the other shows. No one cares about them, and that's fine. And so so the company and the TV network wants you there. But yeah, I digress. Like I said, I was a big fan of the 12-man, but it got really cluttered. The ending was pretty cool though. And then the stare off with Top Flight and Jericho and MJF, that should be a pretty good match. Hangman Page and Johnny Hungy, along with Johnny Hungy. I love John Silver. with Alex Reynolds. They battled Matt Hardy and Private Party to open the show. I actually thought this was really good. I really love that they got smart about how, if they're going to integrate stories with BTE and Dynamite, and this is one of them. And a lot of Adam Page's stuff has been intertwined a lot. And now the whole notion of, like, since he lost to Kenny, and Kenny is the champion, and he basically left the Elite. Will he join the Dark Order? Because they've been so friendly to him. They've, unlike the disrespect that they showed Dustin last week, they genuinely, they genuinely actually want him. People forget how when Brody Lee was around, he actually tried to recruit him. So I like that story is going on. Yes, they lost, but it wasn't because they couldn't get on the same page, because at one point they were on the same page in the match and kind of dominating the match. But in the end, because they aren't a team that's very comfortable with each other, they made just one or two mistakes. Private Party capitalized, and then the little story with Private Party and Matt Hardy is that, Matt Hardy basically stole the victory from him. I like that little story too. Well, I'm your mentor. I'm supposed to get the win. Like, I kind of like it, because they're like, yeah, okay, Matt. I'm not really sure about all that.
I'm enjoying the super, like, pompous, arrogant heel Matt Hardy.
He's.
I'm enjoying that. Like, he can do anything.
He has surprised me the most. So, because he came in during the pandemic, realized that the broken Matt Hardy thing wasn't going to work because there really was no fans there. And the broken gimmick only really works with fans there because he can feed off of them more. So he was like, okay, let me go back to the drawing table. And then he kind of went back to classic Matt Hardy. Started to team up with Private Party a bit more, teamed up with the Elite. And now has morphed his character into, like, well, me and my brother are legends in the game, so you should just listen to whatever I say. Like I said, I like it a lot. It works, but it also helps build the young and improving Private Party, and gives them some allure working with Matt Hardy all the time now. So yeah, like I said, the match was good. I am gonna love the continued story. And it makes me even more interested to actually continue to watch Being the Elite, because of that little story between the Dark Order and Hangman Adam Page. Plus, the Dark Order on Being the Elite are just hilarious. I love the little things that they do on Being the Elite. They're great. All those guys, and even that gal Anna Jay, they're great in Being the Elite. And it actually doesn't hurt their characters on TV, because they basically act the same. So, like, it actually works really, really well. Cody Rhodes versus Angelico. I'm really happy Angelico is getting the shine. Also, congratulations to Cody and Brandy, because they're having a baby. She found out she was pregnant, which, by the way, I guess that gets rid of that whole story with her and Jade. She kind of can't wrestle if she's pregnant.
Right? When she came out, she was like, "Who told you it was open fight night, bitch?" I thought that was probably my favorite bit.
That was her best promo ever to me. Yeah, no, I agree. That was like her best promo ever to me. Like, because most of her promos have been like almost Stephanie McMahon like, which that's why I'm like, I don't know why you guys are always like taking shots at WWE when you sometimes do some of the same stuff. But it was, all her promos used to be very like Stephanie, like babyface Stephanie, heel Stephanie, which can get annoying. And in that one, it was the first time I felt it was like generically her. Because she used to do like promos and stuff in ROH where she was really good. She was getting really, really good at it. But since she's been with AEW, most of her gimmick stuff hasn't worked out. Like, she had the whole like thing with Khan and or Karma. Yeah, it was horrible. It did not work at all. They dropped that like a bad habit pretty quick. Thankfully. But yeah, so back to that match. Well, it was okay, but at that point they were trying to start to build the fact that that they do have a training school, that they take in a lot of these young wrestlers and have been training them. And the wrestlers themselves, if they want to on TV, they can basically be a part of the Nightmare family. And I actually like that. That works better. That actually works a lot better to me as a faction in a storyline. So Cody Rhodes had an excellent match with Angelico. Angelico, I am so happy is starting to get the single shine, because I told people before when they signed TH2, I'm like, actually, Angelico on his own is one of the best young technical wrestlers in the world. I know his physique can kind of, no, and like his physique makes people think that he's just a high flyer, but it's like no, man. He's had some excellent stuff happen in like AAA and stuff like that. Like, this guy is one of the best technical wrestlers on the planet working today. Like, if he didn't sign with AEW and he went and signed full time with New Japan, he'd probably be one of their upper mid carders, because his in ring work is incredible. He's absolutely and Jack Evans on his own is outstanding. And as a team, they actually work pretty well. I'm going to try to shoot through this pretty quick. John, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you something, because I'm going to still be streaming on YouTube, because the radio show is actually going to end within the next minute. I can't extend it, unfortunately. So I'm going to kind of shoot through the results. The match between these two was absolutely excellent, and I'm really happy that he's getting this shine. Eddie Kingston came out, addressed his enemies. Eddie Kingston is one of the best promos in pro wrestling, so like it's not even a shock. Then there was a 12-man, which me and John kind of already went into. SCU versus the Acclaim. I'm very happy they're giving these two young men shine, because they have worked really, really hard. They deserve it, and I'm happy that SCU aren't over their britches so much at all that like they couldn't put these guys over and take a cheating loss. That was really cool. The Acclaim still has some work to do, because they're a little sloppy, but that's all right. They will get better. Big Swole and Serena Deeb. This thing was a mess. I'm going to go into this more on my live show, on my live stream here. So, John, I'm going to go ahead and let you go, but I'm going to hit you up so I can get you in on my YouTube, man. Thanks for joining me, brother.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
And for everyone else, join me on the YouTube live stream. Thank you for listening to the show. I love you. Stay safe. Be well.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
So yeah, as I was kind of getting into, the women's tag team match was an absolute. It was a mess. It was just. It's hard to. It's hard to kind of get into how much of a mess I think this match was. The ladies themselves. The match itself was all right. The ladies sometimes get a bit sloppy, but it to me it just never works like it should for some reason, or this match never worked like it should for some reason to me. And all four of these women are incredible. So they do because right now Big Swole, for those who don't know, is technically the number one contender for the women's championship in AEW against Hikaru Shida. And so, they have been building her pretty strong, but they've also started to build Abaddon, one of the best female characters they have, with Statlander on the sideline right now. Chris Statlander on the sideline right now. They're building her up to become a very, very strong contender because she's just been kind of going after Hikaru Shida. I love the story that they're telling there. And I'm a big fan of Abaddon, so for me, it works. This match in the end, for me, didn't fully work. I get it. They're trying to intertwine the stories finally, because for a long time, women would get like one match, maybe like a 2-minute segment, and then nothing else on Dynamite. And it was a big issue, especially since Kenny Omega was technically running it and said that women's wrestling should be a bigger proponent here in the States. Apparently forgetting that WWE has actually done very, very good with their women's division and in NXT. And they're some of the best in the world. Like, it's not even close. So, so yeah, it got really messy, and for me, I think they're trying to do too much on top of doing too much in the AEW women's division, and they just need to step it back and go forward again, because some of these storylines aren't really making sense. Most of this match did take place in the commercial break, and like I said, the match itself was fine. It was just the ending was really sloppy, because it basically was an angle for former women's champion to come out with Vicky Guerrero. I'm sorry, her name is eluding me right now. And like I said, I didn't mind the beatdown angle, but it just got really sloppy. The Joey Janela Kenny Omega thing was fine to me. I like that he's going back to beat the opponents he actually did not face in the eliminated tournament. Joey Janela, of course, he just, Joey started the match really well, threw a trash can right at his face before he even got in the ring. But then Joey just got smoked, and he should. He's outmatched against Kenny Omega, and that's how it should be. But then, after the match, Pac comes out. A really cool promo goes down between Omega, Don Callis, and Pac. And Pac basically says, listen, well, unfortunately, you're going to be defending that championship again in a couple of weeks against another man you didn't face, Ray Phoenix. So that's going to be excellent. That's going to be an excellent main event. I cannot wait for it. And overall, I kind of gave AEW out of 5. I gave it a 2.8 out of 5. A lot of good stuff, but still, to me, a lot to clean up. At least finally this week, Kenny Omega didn't come out and cut the same promo that he had already taped and cut on Impact, which is what they did last week, which is why the ratings, the viewership dropped so much for them. So, and now the Sting thing isn't helping them as much, so they need to kind of repick that up. Going into SmackDown really quickly, SmackDown was a decent show. Starts with really awesome promos going back and forth between Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns. Kevin Owens then tries to find his way back out, gets jumped from behind by Jey Uso. Takes a little bit of a beating at first. I love heel Roman. I love broken Jey Uso. Mentally broken and emotionally broken Jey Uso. And Kevin Owens now as his new foil works really, really, really well. And I actually think this match is going to be a fight at TLC. It won't be one of the Roman squashes we've seen recently. It'll be an actual fight. Do I believe Kevin is going to take the championship off of him? No way in hell. But they've always put a lot of faith in Kevin, and their faith has always been incredibly rewarded because Kevin Owens is incredibly talented. I'll just kind of skim through a lot of this. Bailey and Bianca finally had their match. It was excellent. I love that in the end, Bailey she had to cheat her way out of this match because physically she was outmatched. Bianca Belair physically was outmatching her. Even when she got, she was able to, kind of get on top and take over the match from Bianca because of her experience. Bianca is such the athlete and is getting so much better that she found ways around it and out of it all the time. And so she kind of had to cheat her way to win the match, which will allow the feud to continue. And I like that. It gives Bianca a good, really solid first story here on the main roster of SmackDown. And I like where it goes. Really awesome, funny little segment between Big E and Sammy. Sammy did the Sammy Awards, which I figure would be one of these, these fun little heel things, where he basically just gives himself a ton of the awards. But at the end, because before he comes out for the segment, Big E, Sammy leaves to go polish, because he's going to come back with polish to polish these statues, the award statues. Big E comes back, and he's just doing his little evil Big E smile. And apparently, as Best Superstar of the Year, he wrote his own name. Goes out, starts to kind of toy with Sammy, does a really funny thank you speech, and starts to break some of the statues. I don't mind this for Big E. It'll be a minute, and I know people were hoping maybe he would be the one to take it off of Roman, the championship off of Roman, but I got a stupid feeling that they're going to have Goldberg do it, and it's going to be stupid. But him as Intercontinental Champion and have him built strong as a strong Intercontinental Champion, I think works for Big E in this renewed singles run, where he's basically still a New Day member. He's just by himself, and it works really well. And that's not taking into account the awesome promo between him and Paul Heyman last week on Talking Smack, which was absolutely amazing. I think Paul Heyman would prefer if it was probably Roman against Big E. I think that's a bigger selling point, but we're going to get what we're going to get. Really cool story, still building with Otis. Though it came at the expense of Shinsuke Nakamura, but hey, he likes to surf. So I guess if he prefers surfing over working all the time, and they're still going to pay him like he was working all the time, go for it. I mean, Shinsuke's in his early 40s, be able to do what he wants, man. Solid win. We'll see. I think the whole story is going towards Chad Gable just basically betraying him. So it won't really matter that much, but we'll see. At least they're actually building Otis slowly. It does suck that they broke up Heavy Machinery, though. Now it makes even less sense, especially since he didn't, they didn't do anything with him in the Money in the Briefcase contract. So, Carmella and Banks had a really cool segment. Carmella's not winning the championship, but they have built her pretty strong on her return. Her first feud is with the women's championship. That's actually pretty good, seeing as how Billie Kay, Tamina, the Riot Squad, they're actually all on this brand as well. So but Vince loves his blonde characters for women, doesn't he? So, and then of course most of the story throughout the night was the Roman Reigns Kevin Owens thing. Every time they thought they knocked Kevin Owens down, Kevin Owens got back up. A beat down in the hallway, a beat down in the trainer's room, and then a final beat down in the ring. And still at the end of the night, Kevin Owens sat his butt up in a chair and sat tall, I guess you could say. So I'm really interested to see that match. I actually think TLC will be a pretty good pay-per-view. I'm actually going to do a TLC preview video a little bit later tonight. I'm just going to kind of post it to my main page and let everyone just kind of stream it and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you for joining me. Like I said, I'm going to just kind of post that preview video a little bit later. I will be posting a mini schedule about the new page and stuff like that here probably in the next 2 days because Christmas break and New Year's Eve, my schedule is a little flunky. so it's going to be a little difficult to kind of do these Fridays and Saturdays, these upcoming Fridays and Saturdays. But I think the next 2 Saturdays they'll just be longer shows. Once again, you can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Jays Take Radio. Once again, that's facebook.com/Jays Take Radio, JAYSTAKERADIO. You can also find me on blogtalkradio.com/Jays Take. Thank you for joining me. Happy holidays to you and your family. Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa. I think that we're already on the second day of not Ramadan. I'm so sorry. Please don't be offended. But basically, happy holidays to you and yours. Even if you don't really celebrate the holidays, happy, Saturday to you and your family. Much love. Have a good one.